if Republicans are going to negotiate with the Democrats on Social Security, let's first find out what Democrats are for. All they've talked about for the last 3 years is what they're against, which is personal accounts. I haven't heard any proposal from Democrats that would solve this problem that I know of. They've simply been on the attack. And until they come forward and say what they're for, it seems like it's a fairly poor negotiating tactic for Republicans to negotiate. Second, payroll taxes are too high. They are not too low. Let me say that again. The payroll tax is too high. It is not too low. If you go back in the history of this program, the first Social Security tax when Franklin Roosevelt created this program was 1%. Correct me if I'm wrong on these numbers, Peter, but 1% tax on the employer and a 1% tax on employee. And it was only something like on the first $3,000 or $4,000 of income. Today, the tax is of course 15.3%, and that goes up to close to $100,000. And of course, one of the few proposals that some Democrats have talked about is getting rid of that cap entirely, so that we'd all have the good fortune of paying that tax on every dollar of income that we earn. I like the idea, by the way, when I said taxes are too high, I like the idea of going to a pay-as-you-go basis, and let's cut the payroll tax right now so that it only collects as much as is needed to pay the benefits. Third, the growth in entitlements, the best way to balance the problem with entitlement spending is through economic growth. There's a myth in this town that you can't solve entitlement spending problems through growth. We can't grow our way out of this problem, and that is wrong. We can grow our way to this problem. Now, it would require some minor fixes to these programs. But I ran these numbers just recently. And if the American economy were to grow by 1 percentage point faster than it's projected to, right now under a lot of these long-term projections that you look at, which are over a 75-year period, the American economy is only expected to grow at about 2.3%. The average growth rate of the American economy over the last 50 years has been closer to 3 to 3.5%. And so what I'm saying is if we can maintain high-octane, high-growth economy, and the economy were to grow at 3.3% real rather than 2.3% real, guess what happens? Because of the most powerful force in the universe, which is compound interest, the American economy would grow so rapidly over the next 75 years that you would be able to pay off all of these unfunded liabilities just through faster economic growth, which means that anything that raises taxes and slows growth actually makes the long-term problem worse, not better. Fourth, the most important and politically astute thing that Republicans could do right now in terms of dealing with the political issue of Social Security, which would also be good policy and good politics, is to stop the raid on the Social Security Trust Fund. And this is the one issue Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, man or woman, or adult or child, every American is opposed to the raid on the Social Security Fund. And as most of you in this room know, Social Security is now running about an $85 billion a year surplus. That is, and to put that in very easy to understand language, $85 billion that is paid in the FICA payroll tax, which is supposed to be used for Social Security, is being spent on things like the bridge to nowhere in Alaska. And that's something that makes Americans very, very angry. Republicans should bring an end to that. Fifth and finally, and this is a point that I think Peter Ferrara will dwell on, but it's an important point in terms of any negotiations on Social Security. The sickness of Social Security and the extent to which this program is broken is not a problem of the solvency of the system. It's a problem that Social Security gives workers a lousy rate of return. And there's a big difference between those two things, because sure, you can close this long-term liability problem by just raising taxes through the roof, but the problem with that is it's not going to make the low rate of return for workers any better. In fact, it's going to make the rate of return much worse. And so as a basis for any negotiations or any kind of compromise on Social Security, we have to make sure, we have to have a litmus test, which is that whatever we do does not make for young workers Social Security a worse deal than it already is. Now, we ran some numbers on Social Security in our paper about 2 weeks ago, and we showed that for the average worker, they are only going to get about 50% of what they could get from a basic personal retirement account system. So that is to say, most workers are only going to get 50 cents on the dollar. That is, when I say most workers, I mean most young workers who are now entering the workforce, people like my children who are teenagers. When they start working, they're going to get 50 cents on the dollar. That's a rotten deal. Social Security is a rotten retirement system for the vast majority of young workers. And the fix to say to those young workers who are going to get a rotten deal, guess what? We got a new deal for you. You're going to pay in even more into this system, and you're going to get less out of it. seems to me fiscal child abuse against our children. And I don't see how anyone can say that we're fixing Social Security to benefit our children when, in fact, they're going to bear the brunt of these higher taxes and lower benefits. Thank you.